Emotional intelligence is a little bit of a buzzword in psychology and in the everyday world, but do we actually know what it is? Can it improve, and can we work on it? Hey guys, welcome to another episode of GetPsyched, and today we're going to be looking at emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is a word that you might hear quite often in university or in school. You might also hear it at work. It's a pretty common phrase used in the workplace and in interviews especially. However, what does emotional intelligence actually mean? Does it really exist, and can we improve it? Well, emotional intelligence is often seen as the other form of intelligence, going toe-to-toe with IQ. In fact, interestingly enough, studies have been conducted that show that people with lower IQ actually have an improved emotional intelligence. These studies showed that people with a lower IQ perform better on emotional intelligence tests, often up to 70% of the time more than people with higher IQ. In short, emotional intelligence is actually our ability to understand and regulate our own emotions and to understand the emotions of others. For example, an attribute of somebody with really high emotional intelligence is that they can often quite easily understand and tell the emotions of another person based on facial expressions. Also, in addition to this, people with high emotional intelligence are actually able to use the understanding of their own emotions to their advantage. A classic example of this was researched by John Mayer and Peter Alevey. These are the people that actually first established the term emotional intelligence in the early to mid 1990s. They established that people with high emotional intelligence were able to utilize high analytical processing skills when they felt sad. Now, this is a perfect example of when a person with high emotional intelligence is able to use even a negative emotion to their advantage. Now, it's quite good sometimes to use an illustrative image to understand emotional intelligence a little bit better, so I've attached an image just here that you'll be able to see. Now, this image shows that there are two pillars to having high emotional intelligence, the first of which is personal competence and the second of which is social competence. Now, self-awareness and self-management come under the umbrella of personal competence, and that's really about how we regulate our own emotions and how we understand our own emotions. Social competence, on the other hand, is our ability to understand the emotions of others. Social awareness and relationship management basically says that if we're able to understand another person's emotions well enough, we can improve on our relationship with that person. One thing I'd quite like to highlight here is what emotional intelligence isn't. It isn't happiness, motivation, or calmness, or these kind of qualities. Even though these qualities are great characteristics to have, they have very little to do with intelligence or emotions. So we've given a little bit of a background as to what emotional intelligence is, but can we measure it? John Mayer and his colleagues, the creator of the term of emotional intelligence, were also very interested in this. They did a lot of research on this, and they gave participants statements, and they gave those participants options to choose based on those statements. I'm going to give you an example just now. The first statement was, George felt sad, and an hour later he felt guilty. What happened in between George feeling sad and guilty? They were then asked to choose between the following two statements. The first of which is A, George assisted a neighbour to attend a medical appointment in order to help that neighbour out. The second option is B, George lacked the energy to call his mother and so missed calling her on her birthday. Now, those with the higher emotional intelligence often chose B as the example for that. What did you guys choose? Now, John Mayer and his colleagues found that those that did really well in emotional intelligence tests continued to show developments in emotional intelligence. They also saw that children increased in emotional intelligence as they grew older. With this research and with these examples, John Mayer and his colleagues were able to establish that yes, emotional intelligence could in fact be measured. So now we've come to a consensus of a little bit about what emotional intelligence is. We've established that yes, it can be measured, but can it be improved? Well, the answer to that is yes. Now, when we initially experience something, it's natural for us to have an emotional reaction to that experience. Now, that emotional experience happens in the limbic system of our brain before it moves to the frontal lobe where it can be reasoned. So that really leads us to understand that if we can improve on our emotional intelligence, it's really going to come from the communication between our limbic system and our frontal lobe, or basically how we communicate emotional reactions to experiences and rationalizing them. So how can we do that? Well, first we can show awareness of our own emotions in our everyday life. This sounds easy at first, but actually it's a really difficult thing to do. If we can understand our emotions a little bit better, then we can understand that communication between our emotional experience of them and our rationalizing of them, therefore overall increasing our emotional intelligence. Some tasks that you might like to take on with this is just trying to experience your emotions in everyday life. That can involve going to work, it can involve what you think of the weather, these kind of things. The second thing that you can do is to practice empathy towards others. Now, this is not to be confused with sympathy, but practice your skills in being able to understand the emotions of others and reflect those emotions to that person. These two examples are really good starting points in being able to develop your emotional intelligence, showing awareness of your own emotions and practicing empathy to understand the emotions of others. We've already understood that those two things really are the pillars of good emotional intelligence. So guys, thanks so much again for watching GetPsyched. We've been looking at emotional intelligence today, but make sure to stay tuned weekly for upcoming videos and check out some of the other videos that we have uploaded. Thanks again.